you, Honorable, who is the chairperson of the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee on Justice and Legal Affairs. Welcome, Honorable Mataranyika.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Bridget.
Audrey.
Audrey.
Yes, thank you.
Okay,
we also have Honorable Dorcas Sibanda, who is MP for Bulawayo Central, and she's here really representing the women's constituency, her own constituency, as well as other issues that have been coming out from the constituencies that she represents.
I'm now representing Bulawayo Metropolitan under PR. I was once in Bulawayo Central, but now I represent the proportional representation. And it's my pleasure.
Here, Reverend Nyanete, who is a representative of the child rights sector. He is with the Zimbabwe National Council for the Welfare of Children. Reverend Nyanete, if you could bring your face to the screen and acknowledge being in the meeting. Excellent. Then as we are waiting for the colleagues Abi to come through and Nyarazai to come through, I'm going to just push Saki into a corner and say, my dear sister, do you want to come on and just say hello to the meeting?
Good evening, Honorable Swanda. Good evening, colleagues. I'm duly pushed.
I'm sorry. I apologize.
No problem.
Good evening, Saki. Nice to have you in the meeting again.
Thank you, Honorable. It's lovely to see you as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. So as you may have heard, colleagues, we are stuck for time, and Honorable Mataranyika has indicated that he has other commitments after this meeting, which we had scheduled up to 6 p.m. Be that as it may, I think I'm going to quickly get us to go into the meeting. Charamba, I'm your host today, and I'm with the Women's Coalition of Zimbabwe. I'm Director of Women's Space, but I sit on the coordinating committee of the coalition, and I usually host most of our discussions online in this context. So we want to speak to the marriages bill. And as you may have heard, we have clauses that we think need discussion around the children's rights, around women's rights, and around how the two intersect. Saki, to sort of set the tone in terms of what we have at the table right now. And then if you can speak, Saki, in about 2 minutes, then I'll move on to Reverend Nyanete. And from there, I'll move on to Honorable Sibanda, and then come through to you, Honorable Mishek. Thank you. Over to you, Saki.
Thank you very much, Audrey. Good evening, colleagues. I think maybe what we want to do is to start by acknowledging that the process of the marriage bill has reached a very advanced stage in our parliament, that it has gone through the National Assembly and has also been considered by the Senate, and it's an important piece of legislation because it addresses what I can call matters outstanding for women and children in different ways as we look at the whole set of laws that are there to protect and to promote women's rights. I think of the reason why we continue to have this discussion, even though the bill is moving through Parliament, is that we want to keep on the agenda, some outstanding issues. We acknowledge the progressive nature of the bill, pertaining to, for example, issues around being quite clear about child marriage and trying to put a legal measure to the age. I'm not sure if I really consented to my marriage, but so these things might seem, the language might seem to be a little bit trite, but I think it speaks to the lives of women. And I know that it also speaks to the lives of men. But the reason why we raise the issue of it speaks to the lives of women is that when there is a problem but I think that there are also, issues around. For the first time, we see a bill that tries to put both our civil marriages and our custom. One of the things that we could have done that we missed the opportunity was to go a little bit deeper on that section 15 that talks about customary marriages. As you know, that is the majority in wherein most people are married. So for example, when we talk about at what point are you married? Is the vulamlomo in love? Is it mama enough? At what stage do we consider you on the administrative system of our marriages, as it were, that people should be encouraged to register? We know that the marriages are not registered, and I think this bill is trying to drive very strongly the registration of marriages, and it has put into place and also very visibly the process of registering. The worry remains in what happens if a marriage, but we know that when problems hit, that's when it begins to become a problem. So we could tighten it up administratively, in my view. And then thirdly, we also have issues, just the last one, pertaining to not just the customary law marriage arrangement, which I want to acknowledge and support, and also acknowledge the fact that even in cases where we have kugaranaka, there is still the bill seeks to say that even in those cases, marriages should be registered. In section for the law, because they are then also forced to come before the registration process. So, but there are still gaps in terms of how this is practiced, where the rights of women begin to collapse in the system. And of course, there's been a lot of public debate recently with people who, in my view, are wrongly interpreting the law, the bill that is currently in the House, to say that lobola has customary practices that signify marriage, so that we can give full and rounded presentation. If you look, for example, just this year, the South African Constitutional Court had redirected Parliament to strengthen regulation and administrative issues pertaining to customary marriages. If we look at the Kenyan new, so the bill is still in the House, there are matters outstanding. What can we do? Apologies, Audrey, you are speaking, but I think you need to unmute yourself. Thank you so much, Audrey.
I'm sorry. Yes, we continually need to be. And how do we ensure that this whole marriage bill, which will become an act in a little while, does not leave a raw end for women, as we have been crying and we are saying we want to move milestones. I think one other issue is also about staying away from each other. Is it for a period of 3 or 6 months? We want to then further unpack that to say, what then happens if you say to me, you are away, Nebasa, and then you come back and the marriage has been dissolved. But we are also saying this this marriages bill has an effect on the children's rights. Reverend Nyanete, talk to us about your concerns.
To acknowledge everyone who is on the platform. My apologies, we don't have electricity this end. I had to put on a generator in order to connect to the main Wi-Fi. They are part of the registering the unions, is that it will then recognize children's rights to the asset and also to any inheritance that then is processed at some stage in the life of the marriage. So that recognition is important. And also the fact that some children, for some time, and this may continue to happen, is that they may be born out of a registered union, a marriage or a union that is not registered, the point of the woman. So recognition of those unions is important for children. Also equally important is the issue of defining when a person can be married below the age of 18. Therefore, it's important that marriage happens above 18, not anything below it, because that is a child, and it becomes difficult for any adult to engage a child in marriage who is below 18.
Addressed by the bill, the current bill. Thank you, Reverend. I want to acknowledge Dr. Nyaradzai Gumponjanda, who is the Goodwill Ambassador of the UN in terms of ending child marriages or early marriages. Welcome, Nyaradzai, to the meeting.
Thank you very much, and my apologies for just coming in at the tail end, but I needed to just say I'm here, I'm committed, I'm supportive, and I'm excited. I, of course, feel the gap between police and what is happening in our village.
Thank
you. Thank you very much, Audrey. I will also raise my concerns on the bill. Also to say it's not addressing the age of consent, which says 16. At 16, they might have sex. And the bill is silent again on those children who are engaged in marriage. And if they happen not to be happy in that marriage, then what happens next? Do they just walk out just like that? Or the government has got plans? You know, those are the things which we are concerned about as well as women parliamentarians, to say, then the government going to help that child who is now out of marriage? Or are they going to benefit anything, or they just walk out? Then again, on the customary marriage, we know that Zimbabwean men, mostly they don't want to register marriages. And the bill is not addressing again the definition of the customary marriage, is silent on that one, which means then when they happen to separate, or when there's death, or when there is divorce, then what happens to that woman who has been staying there for 40 years, staying unregistered, on an unregistered marriage? You know, we are also concerned about that.
Thank you, Honorable Dorcas. I believe, Honorable Mataranyika, you are picking these issues. Nyaradzai, just to give you a background, we started very late. So Honorable Mataranyika has indicated he has other commitments and he can only be with us for such a time. So you are in time to actually speak to the concern, really giving everybody 2 minutes literally to just speak to the sticky issues. Honorable Sibanda, you've spoken about the age of consent, you've spoken about what you call in the child rights sector, the Romeo and Juliet clause. What happens when the children are not happy and we've actually conceded to a Romeo and Juliet clause? Then you've also spoken to the issue of men desirous decides to go away for 6 months and he returns and says, Audrey, my love, the marriage is over, I've found new love. Before I come to you, Honorable Mataranyika, I'm going to ask Nyaradzai to quickly address also the key or sticky issues for her constituency in the bill. Over to you.
Thank you so much. I will confine my comments to the issues around child marriage, and I really want to thank the honorable members for the sterling work. First is to appreciate and to request that the SADC model law and the standards that we have within the African Union with the Charter on the Rights and Welfare of the Child and the Africa Common Position on Ending Child Marriage, just to ensure that we don't fall below those standards. And within those standards includes the issues around children who experienced marriage before the passage of the law. So the issues that Honorable Sibanda has raised, I think, are very important, so that the bill sufficiently deals with the rights of the children who have been married before. Traditional leaders being a marriage being authorized to solemnize marriages. This is very important. This morning I had meetings with the traditional leaders in Murewa, Chief Mangwenden and his headman. The question which they are also raising is the issue of birth certificate, proof of marriage. So I think within the proof of marriage as a requirement, this becomes equally, just on the implementation is important. The concerns remain around the age of sexual consent and the age of marriage. That gap around which laws do we use for sexual exploitation of children between the age of 16 and 18? Because abuse of a 17 years can be taken as consent when actually it should be covered. So that's the other issue which I feel is not sufficiently covered in the bill. Relates to penalties. When the marriage happens, of course, the law says that it is illegal. Is it then treated? What is the penalties around anybody who marries the person between the age of 16 and 18 is important, because it's a gray zone. It's an area that is not sufficiently. We would like us to have closure. So if Parliament, Honorable Mataranyika, and the Parliament to quickly move the process forward, we have been waiting. The communities are waiting for us to have this alignment and for us to move into the implementation. But again, as the African Union Goodwill Ambassador, as Zimbabwean, I'm very proud of the work that is happening, and I'm very inspired. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vanyaradzai. Honorable Mataranyika, you hear the issues. There's excitement around having the bill. There's excitement around getting us to move forward. But there are also these concerns. What do we do when we are looking at penalty for those that would be per se? How do we harmonize the age of consent vis-a-vis the legal age of majority? And what are we saying about traditional leadership? How do we get them to contribute to adding value and meaning to this marriage bill, which will then become an act? And then those children that have been married before the law came into effect, how again do we address these? These are sticky issues, Honorable, and yet these are issues that we are saying we need addressed. As us on Facebook, I am picking your comments and I'll be throwing them to the panel. Over to you, Honorable. Please unmute yourself, Honorable Mataranyika.
Okay. Thank you very much, Audrey. Let me admit from the, as far as I'm concerned, the bill was introduced in Parliament, and as a committee, we went to the people and the people spoke. We captured their views and concerns, and then we came up with a report that we presented in Parliament, after which a debate ensued. And as we speak right now, the bill moved from the National Assembly to the Senate. As applaud the bill for, number one, bringing all the marriage types in Zimbabwe under one umbrella, to the extent that if this bill is passed into law, we are not going to have a marriage regime or a marriage type that is considered superior to another, which is something that I really applaud the bill for trying to address. Then on the issue of child marriage, I applauded that part. And as you may know, child marriages were outlawed by the Constitution itself, when it says you can only start a marriage from the age of 18 upwards. That is Section 78. And also through the Muzuru case of 2016, which also outlawed child marriages, which is something that I should applaud the bill for. There are a number of issues. Okay, then there comes another very contentious. I would want to make an attempt to maybe address some of the issues or the concerns raised. To begin with, Saki spoke about the customary law marriages, how maybe they are going to, or how marriages are going to be handled after the passing on of this bill into an act. I think in terms of marriages, nothing is going to change per se. Once you have your customary law marriage, you are supposed to have it registered within, I think, 3 months of that. So people can still retain their cultural ways of entering into a marriage. That's not a problem. And now the beauty about this marriage is they have also included chiefs to be marriage law officers, which means once you have entered into your traditional marriage, and the chief will preside over that. So nothing is really going to change in terms of how you conduct marriage. Then what happens if the marriage is not registered? Obviously, if the marriage is not registered as is required by the bill, then it's an offense. What I'm not sure of course, is the penalty. I still have to find out what penalty is going to apply to such situations. Marriage is not registered. Then at some point, people want to separate or terminate their marriage in courts. Then obviously they will face problems if they were to approach courts on how to distribute the assets that they acquired during that the existence of the marriage. Because it's not a registered marriage, it's not a recognized marriage. So these are some of the important points that people have to bear, and the importance of registering the marriage. Then,
but Honorable, Honorable, you know very well that men in Zimbabwe, or maybe the world over, as Honorable Sibanda has indicated, are not very keen on registration of marriage. They will simply say to you, say you have me, I paid lobola, we have our children, what else do you want? What do you do in the event that this marriage is not, I have not been successful enough in convincing my partner or spouse to come through and register this marriage? What recourse is there for the partners? It might be the woman who says no, or it might be the man. This I'm speaking from gender conscious perspective. What is the recourse for me? You have been living with me. We've been enjoying each other for the past 10 years, but you refuse to register. What to do? Is there room to have that clause added?
That's a difficult one, because to begin with, people should enter a marriage when they have got full consent that they want to enter into a marriage. That is provided for in the bill. You can't force someone to go into a marriage, but if you were to take a chance and then start staying with someone without a marriage, then you are considered under civil partnerships.
Saki, I hear you, Honorable.
That becomes civil partnership, and the law comes into application if you were to decide to separate or to terminate the civil partnership. I think you cannot.
So the Marriage Act is only so good in as far as we want to separate or to go our different ways. But we are saying we want that registration. Saki, I'm calling on you to say, are you happy with the response that we are getting from Honorable? Should we be excited as the women's constituency that this is the status quo, as it were?
Well, that remains is that perhaps, Honorable, what is being proposed is that there are still very real gaps between the policy, the law, and practice. And that is it is in those gaps where women's rights lie. And I think one of the most difficult things is to say that we have a practical reality. To say if you've already been married and your marriage has been what is currently categorized as an unregistered customary law union, and you now have the marriage bill, how do I convince this man who is sitting across from me on tonight's dinner table to say, let us go and register? The practicalities of our lives. And I think pardon me?
Unless I convince him, Kuti, I want to go and wear bachire kuchechi, come and help me, and then it sounds like he's supporting me. What else? How do we?
I think the reality is that there are some people who go to churches where there is no chance for me to even use the argument here, batch. What happens to because it is not by mistake that the majority of the marriages that we have, even though they are customary in nature, it is not by mistake that they are not registered. Women literally in this content, in our context, have to drag men to the altar. And what the law is trying to do is to afford a protection. But we are concerned about the administrative arrangement that is being proposed, because practically speaking, what else can the law do to ensure that I don't chosen at this one? I think that's the issue that is being raised. I think the second point that is also being raised is, how do we actually extend the SADC model law on child marriages, for example, speaks about a category of children who are already in child marriages. This was an opportunity for the marriage bill to extend protection to children who were married under child marriages, who might want to opt out. And whilst I recognize that in terms of the law, it was let's deal with marriages and then dissolution of marriage or divorce is treated elsewhere, it becomes problematic, because in the earlier clauses of this bill, it says that you equal. That's where the challenge is.
At what point are they equal? At what point are they equal? Vanyaradzai, I would love you to come on here before I ask the Honorable Mataranyika to come through, and the rest of you panelists. Saki is raising a key issue. At what point are we equal, even when you've invoked the Romeo and Juliet clause? And at what point can we actually say these children, yes, they are enjoying the Romeo and Juliet clause, but they need out, or one of them wants out? And also, as you speak to this, Nyaradzai, can you also address the issue of my 16-year-old daughter consenting to having lovely sex with a 36-year-old man, and then eventually finding herself in this unregistered union? What to do, and how do we want the bill to address this? Honorable Mataranyika, if you can already be looking at the bill, so that if these are issues that you have already addressed, you can also flag them to us. Vanyaradzai.
Thank you. It is the primary, irrespective of whether the person has had sex for the last 5 years in an assumed marriage or not. It is still the responsibility of the law to protect our children. And so when we look at children who have experienced what we are calling marriage, I always put in quotation marks, because we are also normalizing sexual exploitation and at times rape of our children by calling it a marriage. So there is that conversation anyway. This marriage has to be voidable in the Marriage Act. The child who wants to opt out should have the right to do so, so that it's not treated as every child who was married before the date of commencement of the law is stuck in that relationship. We have children who were married yesterday. We have children at my shelter who came yesterday. And if the law is passed tomorrow, we're saying those children are stuck in those relationships. I think those marriages have to be made voidable. The children needs to be protected. A child, including the other boys I've heard today from some chiefs of boys who are forced to Kugaranak, young boys who are given older women. So look at how our marriage law should protect our children and make these marriages void, because the marriage does not exist anyway, and the Constitution was passed in 2013. So the marriage law is implementing an existing constitutional protection provided since 2013. So I would ask the Parliament that the due date for consideration with regards to marriages and what happens has to be when the Constitution was passed, because that's when, as a nation, we said no child should be married. Anybody who married a child thereafter committed an offense. And therefore, those marriages do not exist at law, because constitutionally, because the Constitution provided so. The question that you have raised on a 16-year-old having a sexual relationship with a 30-some or 40 or 70-year-old, I got that range because even with this COVID, and raping them. And I feel from a purely work on which we do all the time on women's rights, there is the issue of power. What is called consent at times is not consent, it's cohesion, it's pressure, it's looking at the unequal power relations between the 30-some-year-old and the 16-year-old. That child, an adult is expected to treat a minor in loco parentis. Child consent has to relate also to the age of the child. Definitely, this is why we need this law to be looked at, because we cannot give consent for all other reasons at a certain age and then give the right for our children to be exploited. For 2 years, we are giving an openness for exploitation. I think, yes, I fully understand that our children are having sex, including amongst themselves. Yes, we are not hiding, burying our head under the sand.
Thank you, Nyaradzai. Honorable, you hear this. When a child is involved in a sexual relationship and they are below the age of 18, they cannot consent to sex. How are we ensuring that the Marriage Act to be, which is the bill, takes care of some of these concerns? Reverend Mfundisi Nyaneti, I am looking at you and wondering if you might be having issues that you want to raise. But before I come to you, Vamataranyika, I'm also seeing Danai, who is from Zwala, where Abi also is, and she wants to speak. Danai, if you can quickly unmute yourself.
Okay, thank you very much. I just wanted to add something to what Nyaradzai was saying in relation to child marriage and the age of consent, particularly for looking at the criminal code, which says that any person who has sex with a child under the age of 12, it's automatically rape, even if the child verbally consented. But when it comes to children between the ages of 13 and 16 that don't have the capacity to consent, there is a defense that it's not rape if the child, or if the person proves that the child consented verbally or something like that, which means essentially at law in Zimbabwe, a child can consent to sex at the age of 13. That's what it means. Or in fact, at the age of 12, considering the fact that anybody under the age of 12 being 11 and below, it's automatic rape. But now when you're saying that anybody under the age of 16 years, you shouldn't have sex with them, it becomes a crime in terms of Section 70, which is sexual intercourse with a young person. You're essentially then saying in Zimbabwe, children can consent to sex at the age of 12, 13. That's all.
Thanks, Danny. So, Honorable, there are all these issues and there are all these concerns. What is the room to sort of take care of this? Because we are celebrating the milestone. We don't want to hold us back longer, but we also are saying, even as we are moving, let's leave nothing behind that can leave our children susceptible to abuse, to rape, be they male or female. And we are hearing that the young boys are being forced into the blankets of the old women because under the pretext of Kugaranak. Honorable, you are the chair of the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee and you are looking into these issues. What room is there to look to address these concerns? Please unmute yourself, Honorable. We are missing important information.
Okay, thank you. Before I touch on child protection, let me quickly address the question that was raised. I think it was Saki, about how you can drag a man to marriage.
Yes.
In terms of this bill, under clause for consent to marriage, it clearly says that a marriage shall not be solemnized or registered in terms of this act unless each part to the marriage has given his or her free and full consent to the marriage. So you can't do anything. But in the event that you then stay together and maybe you have children or you acquire property, then you are considered to be in a civil partnership. And the consent or issues are addressed under clause 40 under civil partnership. Then coming to the issue of children, protection of children. It's unfortunate that this bill did not touch on the age of consent, which we felt it should have done. In fact, in our recommendations, we stated that the bill should have or should actually address the issue of age of consent and raise it from 16 to 18. in my humble opinion, I think once we have done that, we have addressed all these issues that were raised, including by Nyaradzayi. Once you have the sex with a child, as far as I'm concerned, it should carry some penal result. It should have some penalty applied on the action, because to begin with, you cannot marry a child. You cannot have sex with a child. But unfortunately, what is happening, there are a number of youth organizations, as we speak right now, that are advocating for the age of consent to then come to the issue of children who were married before the coming of the Constitution. I think most of them by now are now adults, and in any case, marriage with the child was outlawed by the Muzuru case. There was a ruling that outlawed the Muzuru case. So whether one is an impostor or whatever, if they get married to a child, that's a criminal offense, and it's addressed, I think, under the Criminal Law Codification and Reform Act. So yes, I also agree with the point that we should have adopted the SADC model law, because it addresses issues of emancipation of children who have suffered such consequences in a comprehensive manner, including how the state can also offer financial and psychosocial support. So unfortunately, these issues, but we recommended in our report that the minister should consider adopting the SADC model law. So in a nutshell, that's what I can say.
Thank you, Honorable. Thank you very much. You still have not spoken to the issue around what can be done, and you have acknowledged, and thank you very much for acknowledging and acceding to the fact that truthfully, this bill did not take into context or concern the issue of the age of consent. Now, what can be done about the issue of the age of consent, given that we are saying on the left hand, the children should be allowed to consent to sex at 16, and we are, because this is within the purview of the children's rights or the child rights section. And Reverend Nyanete, I would love for you to speak to that a bit. And then we are saying marriage has to be at 18. What happens in those 2 years? How do I deal with my child who is consenting to having regular sex with this adult transgenerationally and making themselves vulnerable to ABC without actually infringing on their rights as a child, and yet abused to be exploited sexually because they've arrived at the age of consent? And as Dani has indicated, if it can be proven at law that this child actually consented, how do we strike that balance, Honorable?
The lawmaking process in Zimbabwe involves the National Assembly, the Senate, and the President. I do not see how this bill is going to pass through the Senate, because the chiefs, when we had a meeting with them, they openly opposed the position that we can allow children below the age of 18, that is between 16 and 18, to engage in sexual activities. So they are very much opposed to such positions. But if it manages to pass the Senate as well, the chance that the President might stop it, because he is also part of Parliament. He's also involved in the lawmaking process of the country. So it is my hope, my personal position, that the age of consent will be addressed in this bill and be raised to 18. to address some of
Thank
the
you, Honorable,
concerns.
but yes, but we have the child rights sector representatives, and that's Reverend Nyanete and Vanyaradzai here. This is what the PPC is saying. They want the age of consent is to 18, not 16. And yet, as the child rights movement, you are saying you want the children to still enjoy that age of consent aspect. We have seen conversations around that. How would you propose that this moves through with?
Thank you, Audrey. And I agree with Vanyaradzai in her points in terms of issues of children. But what I would want to quickly say is that the Constitution has defined who is the child and is the supreme law. So we cannot go back to then argue around issues of age of consent. Let's just go to that limit where the Constitution has clearly said a child is anyone below 18. And anyone who gets into a sexual relationship with that child, it's below 18, then it's a criminal offense because that person is an adult. Who is?
But Mfundisi, it's the children who are saying we want to be allowed to have sex at 16. I am not seeing the child rights representatives from SAT and I think Justice for Children who have also been involved in these conversations. It would really be very nice to hear these issues. And Mfundisi, are you not being a moralist?
When the other organizations talk about access at 16, it's more to do with access to sexual education, information.
Mfundisi, I hear you. I hear you, Vanyaradzai. If you can be on standby while I allow Dani to speak. Dani, I hope you are speaking to the children's rights as well as also
that when it comes to children having sex with each other, as long as there was consent, it's not even a crime. If you look at the criminal code, if you look at the Criminal Procedure and Evidence Act, you will realize that it's not a crime, it's like child's play. So when it comes to them consenting among each other, there is no crime for that. What should be criminal is adults engaging in sex, and that goes against the Constitution, which specifically speaks to the fact that children must be protected from sexual exploitation, among other things.
Thank you, Dani. Vanyaradzai, can you speak to the children's rights as well as harmonizing this with the marriage bill?
Thank you so much. I know this is a very sensitive about children having sex among themselves. There is growing evidence that if a 17-year-old, we should not allow girls, because the exploitation of girls exists, the exploitation of people, young people, abuse, but they are copying already the wrong way of doing mahumbe. So I think we should not, yes, there is a thin line. The law is not only there to provide direction on where the nation has to go, but also at times the law is there to protect and regulate. So I am very clear in terms of my own conscience that I want the law that recognizes the evolving capacities of children to make decisions, but it also needs to be accompanied with understanding the full consequences of sex, so that sex is not just pleasure. It's not that young people are having sex just for pleasure. When you have sex, including for pleasure, you can fall pregnant, and there's a consequence to that pregnant, and the child would be born whom other people would be responsible because both parents are still children. You can have an STI, and the STI has a consequence to your own health and to that of your follower, and the discussion around the age of consent to bring not just the right to autonomy and to understand what I need with my body, but also to what are the consequences for those rights. I go back to how I'm just one point that including Chiramu, which allows you can sleep with you, after all she's your wife. So consent of children has to really be addressed in a substantive way, and I really would appreciate if Senate can have a debate on this issue.
Thank you, Vanyaradzai. We need to be winding up. Honorable Svanda, if you can speak, then I ask Honorable Mataranyika to come through We are talking about issues of consent here. We are talking about issues of marriage and protecting our children from child marriage. We are also talking about ensuring women's rights are well taken care of in the marriage bill, which should be an act of parliament once it passes through. But I'm also hearing you, Mataranyika, saying there are chances that it will not sail through as it is. So I'm hoping that when you speak, you are going to be telling be it consenting or dissenting with some of the issues that have been raised.
Thank you very much. I'm also a mother, and I'm also concerned about the 16-year-old having sex with a 35-year-old. I will still advocate for the bill to raise from 16 to 18 years, age of consent. We have seen with most of the girls, they get stuck in marriage because of poverty or because they are lured into such marriages by family. Now I'm saying as a woman and didn't work, the government should say, okay, we are taking you back to school, or we are offering you a job, or we will be looking after the little children from the child marriage, things like that. This is what we are advocating for as women. And because of time factor, I want to also touch on the traditional leaders to say they can be marriage officers, which is a good move. But there's also another version which is saying taboo to lobola should not be paid. I don't think it will go down with traditional leaders, but we need database now. So we have to marry again in Bedbridge, things like that.
Thank you, Honorable Usbanda. Thank you so very much, Vama Taranyika. A lot of issues have been raised, and I really would like you to just sort of speak to this. Over to you. If you can unmute yourself.
Okay, thank you. Let me first touch on Danai's contribution. I think the issue of sexual engagement between an adult and a child, I think there is no argument there. It's a given. It's a criminal offense, so we shouldn't spend more time on that. But she then raised an issue about the sexual activities within the teenage group themselves. And I'm glad that Wanyaradzi raised very important points that once you get engaged in sexual activities, there are other consequences like pregnancy and STIs. And I don't know whether these children are saying they should then get married when they are below the age of 18 because there is a pregnancy. Perhaps she could shed more light on what will happen after a girl gets pregnant under those circumstances when they are enjoying, as she says. Then on STIs, one can develop an STI that at some point they may require maybe a major operation. At that age, they need an adult, they need a parent or a guardian to sign for them because the medical facilities are not going to attend to them because they do not have capacity to enter into a legal contract. So I think these are all consequences that they have to think about these children. But as for me, like I said, I think we should just outlaw sexual activities or make them an offense below the age of 18. Then there was an issue of register, which Honorable Sbanda raised. I think the bill has addressed that point, that all marriages, whether it's a customary law marriage or what, they should be registered so that everyone can access the database and know that Mataranyika is married and he cannot marry again. So I think in a nutshell, that's my...
Thank us and sort of have one quick last round of contributions. We see that there is so much that needs to be taken care of. I'm just trying to plug in my machine. There is so much that needs to be taken care of. The issues of safety, security, of... Lord, excuse me for a second. Thank you for that. issues of protecting our children in terms of lobola, in terms of chiramu, in terms of naka, in terms of even saying that they have their rights that need to be protected and that need to be promoted. And we are saying at the same time, we are acknowledging that women are keen to have their marriages registered, but our colleagues, our male counterparts are so not excited about that. How do we move forward? I think I'm just going to ask for 30 seconds from each of us to sort of speak parting shots. What are the issues that we want the Honorable to take with him as we are moving forward? I'll start with you, Saki. To you, Reverend Nyanete.
Thank you very much. For me, I would request Honorable Mataranyika to put as part of the next steps in the engagement in Parliament and in Senate, for us to recognize the SADC model law, because it would complement our own law. So that could be part of the work that needs to happen. And secondly, to address the issues of consequences of this marriage law on children who experienced marriage. So I think those are the two issues for me, and indeed to continue to push for us to have the law.
Thank you, Vanyara. Thank you very much for being very clear on the advocacy issues. Saki, are you still with us? If not, then I'll quickly go to Reverend Nyanete.
Thank you, Audrey. For me, I believe that we need to raise the age of consent to 18 so that we don't have these issues that are arising. And also the fact that the Children's Act is aligned to the Constitution, there's still also opportunity there to address the issue of age of consent through that. But it's clear that we need to raise the age of consent to 18.
Much, I still don't see Saki. Honorable Mataranyika, your parting, no, before you speak, Honorable Svanda.
Thank you very much. I will concur with what the two have said. For maybe 3-4 decades, Bakaita divorce, they are expected to just go because they were not contributing, yet we know that women contribute 24/7. The bill should also address such issues to say a woman is working 24/7 for 4 decades. Because after all,
Thank you. Thank you. We've lost you. Sorry, we lost the tail end of your speech, Honorable.
Okay. I was saying the bill also should address the issue of sharing the joint property which could have been acquired during the unregistered customary law marriage, because we have seen that a woman can, his argument will be this woman was not working in Indindanga Shishanda, yet the woman was doing unpaid care work kumba Shishanda 24/7. Shishanda stere kutokuna mna ruswera mu office. So the bill should look into that to make sure that there's equal sharing on both partners.
Thank you so very much for that one, Honorable Svanda. Honorable Mataranyika, we want to thank you for all your contributions, but we also want, as a parting shot, please, what window is there for us to ensure that our desires are taken care of? You are indicating that there might be a few snags, but where is it that we can come in and feed into that to ensure that the final product is really addressing our concerns within the context of a civil partnership, within the context of an unregistered customary law union, within the context of a customary marriage? And
when we had the public hearings, did you participate as Women Coalition of Zimbabwe?
Yes, we did, Honorable. Yes,
Yeah.
we did throughout
Because
the country.
Is it? I think if you did and you submitted your concerns, they were captured and they should be in the report. So we made recommendations. I don't know whether you had sight of our report. If you didn't, I can forward it to you. But I think the only chance that we still have is to try and lobby the senators to ensure you have just raised. And on the issues of what people should do, like was raised by Honorable Smanda, you're already in a marriage and the man is refusing to register. Yes, the bill is actually taking into account people in such situations, because the purpose of the civil partnership is to address issues to do with the distribution of assets when you separate or when the other partner dies. So in terms of assets she's raising, it's covered in the bill under civil partnership. But before you get married and someone is refusing to go for, to have your marriage registered before you commit.
But Honorable,
don't start acquiring assets, don't start having children without a marriage.
But Honorable, these are emotional issues. At law, you can be talking black and white, but when we are talking emotional issues, we will not say, let's sign that we are about to copulate and produce a child, will we? We will not sign to say, okay, do we want to kiss now?
An unfortunate position that you have a child and the guy refuses to marry, or the woman refuses to marry. Your only solution is under civil partners, which unfortunately a lot of women were against it. Whereas I felt that it was addressing issues to do with the women who find themselves in such unfortunate position.
Yes,
So,
it's cognizant of the blind spots, which I think Saki spoke to, which also include that my partner can actually move away from home for 6 months and say to me he's away on business. And then lo and behold, when he comes back, he says, listen, this marriage did not happen because of the last 6 months I was sent elsewhere with someone else, and we are done for. So these are the blind spots that we are keen for you to address. So yeah, these are the issues, Honorable. Colleagues, I want to acknowledge those of us who have been with us in the been following us on Facebook, and their comments were also resonating with the discussion at hand. And I want to sincerely thank you, our panelists, particularly you, Honorable Mataranyika. You had indicated that you would be with us for 5 minutes, but you have stayed, steered, and stirred the course for a solid hour. And so I want to genuinely thank you.
I don't think these issues can be considered having another longer meeting in future, because they are very important issues that affect people in their everyday lives.
Honorable, I want to take you up on this and promise you that as the coalition, we are going to arrange for a part 2 of you are saying, Madzimai Murumbo Chemei, we gave you this. And yet we are saying, you may have given us this, but have you seen that beneath this cake, there is a worm, or there is something lurking in the dark? Honorable Dorcas Banda, I want to thank you for having made the time to actually speak to the issues that are affecting women. And in your work as the PR representing Bulawayo Metropolitan, thank you for staying the hour. Vanyaradzai, you were in one meeting of the UN, again, you were speaking to issues affecting women, the status of women, and yet you still found time to come and be with us in this corner to speak with your voice. Let's see your face one more time, Saki. To speak on the women's constituency position in relation to the marriage bill. Dani, thank you for coming through and adding your voice, which is very young, very vibrant, representing cross-generational communication. Mfundisi, siyakubonga. Thank you so much for making the time again. Let's meet next time, and let's keep colleagues in the room and those following us on Facebook, let's keep those comments coming through so that as we pick up phase 2, we are able to address the issues that you have. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you so much, moderator. Thank you, Audrey. Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye for now.